Welcome back inside the den. Hey, the most exciting time of the year is almost here. It's July today as we speak. I'm with my co-host Chris Murray. Nevada hits the field for their first open fall camp under head coach Jeff Choate. Are you excited for some football?
Yeah, I mean, so as we tape this 31 days before the season opener against SMU, so a lot to accomplish if Nevada's going to be up for that challenge. SMU is probably the best team on the schedule, maybe a preseason top 25 team. Nevada about a 24, 25-point underdog, so a lot of work ahead. But yeah, I'm excited just to see what Jeff Choate's year one looks like. There's obviously been a lot of talk. He's a very confident guy. How much improvement will we see after back-to-back 2-10 seasons?
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, a lot of Nevada football hopefuls would like to see something a little different than they've seen the past 2 years. Again, combined record of 4-20, not that great. But as we tape today, first day on the field, so we're really going to get to know this program going forward because we get those availabilities after every practice. So we'll be out there, folks, talking to players and coaches, and really just start to understand, because spring shows you a glimmer, but as Choate said, a lot of players departed after that spring practice, spring game. So totally new look team. But what we're doing today, guys, throughout this week, we're going to go through the roster and break down every position. We're going to start with, with quarterback and running back today. Probably the two most important positions under Jeff Choate's offense. Yeah, let's just get into it, Chris. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Obviously, we got some holdovers from last year. Brendan Lewis, AJ Bianco. Lewis got a lot of those snaps last year, but so did Bianco. Had some starts underneath him. They get a big name transfer, so to speak, in Chuba Purdy. So kind of an interesting quarterback room. Obviously, there's a mix of veteranship and just some newer guys and some players at the JC level. But what is your outlook of the quarterback position?
It just has to play better, because you look at the quarterback play the last 2 seasons, it's been probably the worst in the Mountain West. The 2 years before that, the best in the Mountain West under Carson Strong. So it's been a pretty drastic change. I mean, Nevada's used to all conference quarterback play over really the last 30 years of its football. So, I think Brendan Lewis is probably the leader as fall camp starts, just because Chuba Purdy was dealing with some injuries, so he wasn't full go in spring. He did get full go toward the end of spring, and you could see that athleticism. I mean, even going out to the charity softball game, you could see he's probably the best athlete on the field out there. That's softball, but if you're a super athletic quarterback and you've got Power 5 starting experience at Florida State and Nebraska, you're going to be in the mix at a place like Nevada. So, I would guess Brendan Lewis is probably the starter against SMU, but with the short leash. Anthony Grigsby Jr., you mentioned a junior college guy. He's from the College of San Mateo. He's very undersized, but the staff really does seem to like him. AJ Bianco's got a lot of skills. He's a really, good-sized quarterback. He actually had a better quarterback rating last year than Brendan Lewis did, and doing that as a redshirt freshman. Maybe doesn't have the run skills that Jeff Choate is looking for in this offense. So I think all 4 of those guys are options. I know Jeff Choate's happy with the depth at that position, but none of these guys have actually played high-level football at the FBS level. And, a lot of them have had experience, and, maybe that's the scheme they were in, or maybe they were just young in their career. But Nevada's quarterback play, I don't think it's going to be elite, but I think it has to at least be like Mountain West average. And I think a lot of that does hinge on the run game really giving support. When you look at the wide receivers that Nevada has to work with, the quarterbacks aren't throwing to high-level wide receivers who are proven guys as well. So, I think ultimately it probably comes down to Brendan Lewis and Chuba Purdy, and I think both of them will end up playing quite a bit. I think if Brendan Lewis, is the starter at the beginning of the season, Wolfpack fans saw what he did last year. It wasn't great. And if he starts slow this year, I think Chuba Purdy, that's going to be – the fans are going to be banging down the door to get him out there. So if Brendan does get the starting job, I think he has to play really, really well right out of the gates to be able to keep it and keep that pressure off of him.
They both are similar prototypes, right? Because they are mobile guys that can extend a play. Serviceable arms. Lewis isn't going to go to a combine and just wow people with some arm strength, but both similar prototypes, and both that could be useful in this offense. It's going to be run heavy. I'd expect a lot of read options, just your typical college offense. But, both similar skill sets. We'll see who gets out in front at fall camp. But, there's a lot of promise with this young quarterback room. And obviously Bianco had some flashes last year. Sneaky mobility with Bianco. Probably better arm than the other two. So it depends on what you want to do with the offense. But as you said, as it's constructed right now, this is a run-first team. that drastically needs help at receiver. We'll get to receiver and we'll talk about receiver, but yeah, as it stands right now, we can go 1, 2, 3. Lewis 1, Purdy 2, Bianco 3, and then we sneak in the JC kid just there as a wild card because you don't know because they did like him in spring. So we'll see more. We'll be out at practice. We don't really get too much of a glimpse at practice, but yeah, quarterbacks. This will be big for them, obviously, because they'll be a huge proponent in both the pass and run game under Jeff Choate and OC Matt Lebick. Is it Lebick? Yeah. So he just came back in town too. I heard that he's at the 17th, July 17th. So he's here, and he's been trying to install the offense through Zoom, which can be probably challenging, admittedly. But yeah, we'll see how the offense flows. My guess is probably the defense will be a little bit ahead, just with the amount of holdovers there, with Drew Watts and all that. So. But it starts with the quarterback. I guess we're going to segue into running backs. Obviously, a lot of talent there, Chris. Sean Dollars returns. You get what's his name, Garrow from Boston College, transferred from Boston College, and you have a bevy of transfers from Texas too. So just tell us a little bit about this running back room and. They're going to play a huge role in this offense.
So there are 8 running backs on the roster, and 6 have played at power conference schools or have been on power conference rosters. Not all of them actually played at those schools. So, yeah, you would think that that's a very talented group. If you're talking about 75% of your guys have been at the power conference level. Sean Dollars obviously was at Nevada last year, began his career at Oregon. Ashton Hayes coming from a torn ACL, local kid here from Reno. He began his career at Cal. Patrick Garwo, the third, you mentioned him. He's a transfer from Boston College. He was a second-team All-ACC 2021. Outside of that, a lot of injuries, didn't play all that much. They got a kid from Syracuse and then 2 kids from Texas who were walk-ons there with the Longhorns. But got good scouting reports. And, it seems like Jeff Choate would be pretty intimately, knowledgeable about how good of running backs they are, given that he was over there as a co-defensive coordinator at Texas. So, you mentioned those 6 guys, and then maybe the best running back in the room is actually a true freshman, Dominic Ball. He was at one point committed to Tulane. He's out of the Chicago area, and he actually came here early. He was here for spring ball, and I know the coaches really liked what they saw from him. So, yeah, you would think talent wouldn't be an issue in the running back room. I think it'll probably be by committee. I think Patrick Garwo is kind of interesting because he's more like between the tackles. He's a little bit more like a fire hydrant, whereas Sean Dollars and Ashton Hayes last year are kind of more like all-purpose backs. They want to get outside the tackles. They can run in between the tackles, but that's not necessarily their strength. So I think you've got a variety of different looks among the 8 guys in that room. Obviously, a lot will come down to the offensive line and how they perform in terms of putting up stats, but I always go back to this stat. Nevada's not had a 1,000-yard rushing back since 2016. Like, that's a long, long time. That's 7 years of not having a 1,000-yard back for a team that was used to having 2,000-yard backs every single season. They had 3 in 2009. So, Jeff Choate ran the ball 65% of the time at Montana State. He wants to run the ball. He wants vertical run, vertical pass is what he says. He wants to be able to establish the run so then you can do the play action, the deep shots off that. That's what the entire offense at Montana State was predicated on. Maybe it changes a little bit with Coach Lebick here, as an offensive coordinator. He's been at more pass-oriented schools over the years as well. But the run game is going to be so essential, and I think there's enough talent in the running back room to be successful there. Only 2 of these guys were even on the roster last year, Ashton Hayes and Sean Dollars. So clearly the staff wanted a different look at that running back room, and they've gone about, adding a bunch of different players, mostly from Power 5 schools, who they think can accomplish that.
Yeah, and they have different skill sets like around that running back room. Your Garrow is, he has the pedigree and experience from Boston College, but he could be more of your short yardage back, run with power. Sean Dollars, on paper, the former 5-star guy, just electric, and can catch his passes out of the backfield. And Hayes is more that receiving style back. Obviously, we'll see more with Dominic Ball and all those transfers, but they have varying styles in how they can use them and deploy them. Both as receivers and rushers. But yeah, it's a promising group, and we're going to get to the offensive line and what should be, on paper, a better unit, just because it's another year. So I'm fully expecting them to be a better rushing output this year, not like years past when it's been a struggle, quite frankly. And just, it just seems like, every time they would hand the ball off, it would just be, they'd be met with rushers at the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, this will be the bread and butter of Jeff Choate's offense. And it all starts with these two guys, the quarterbacks and the running backs. So, yeah, football's almost here. And, as we tape today, camp is underway. So, it'll be here quick. We'll see how these two positions perform on August 24th against SMU. Tough challenge, but, excited to see them go. Well, folks, this is like our mini episode, so we're going to keep these short. But thanks for tuning in. Chris, any last thoughts on these?
I mean, just Nevada's offense has to be a lot better. They've been at the FBS level since 1992. Their last 2 years are two of the three lowest scoring output years that they've had at the FBS level. So, clearly they need to improve across the board in everything. But to me, I'm going to be looking at the offense. Like the offense, so it's easier to score points in college football than it ever has been, it seems like. And, if you're putting up 17, 18 points per game, which Nevada's done the last 2 years, you're not going to win very many games. So can they get to the mid-20s, be a little bit more competitive of an outfit? And that does start with, running the ball and your quarterback play.
Yes, starts there. Well, I'm Jared Vasquez. This is Chris Murray. You watched Inside the Den. Guys, remember to like, rate, subscribe, wherever you guys get this podcast. And we'll see you next time on Inside the Den.